"Sir, I need to see your ID again." The captain's voice cut through the cabin like a blade. Passengers froze. Some shifted uncomfortably in their wide leather seats. Others quietly raised their phones to capture what was unfolding. In seat 1 Ampere, a man in a tailored charcoal suit sat perfectly still. He didn't flinch at the order. His tie was sharp, his posture straighter than the seat back. A single phone rested in his hand, camera already recording. His expression wasn't anger, it was something colder, steadier, the kind of calm that unsettles anyone trying to intimidate him. To his left, a flight attendant clasped her hands together, knuckles whitening. Her eyes darted from the captain to the man in 1 Ampere as though begging for the tension to dissolve. Behind them, business travelers angled their phones, lenses peeking between headrests. Evidence was already being archived, second by second. The captain leaned closer, finger extended, his gold-striped sleeve brushing the edge of the seat. "Now!" His tone carried more accusation than request. The hum of the engine seemed to fade beneath the command. The passenger in 1 Ampere slowly raised his boarding pass again, perfectly aligned with the ID he had already shown twice. He spoke evenly, his words clear enough for microphones on half a dozen live streams. "First class, seat 1 Ampere, verified." But that wasn't enough, not for the man in uniform, not for the system that had already decided someone who looked like this didn't belong here. "We'll need to verify again. Security is on standby," the captain snapped. Gasps rippled through the cabin. A woman 3 rows back whispered into her phone, "Are you seeing this?" He's shown them everything, and they still won't let him stay. Her viewer count ticked upward like a clock, strangers joining to witness a conflict that should never have existed. The man in 1 Ampere didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He only pressed his thumb to the phone's screen, the red recording light glowing brighter. Around him, the cabin became a stage flight attendants shifting, executives whispering, strangers filming. The captain squared his shoulders, convinced of his authority. The passenger lifted his gaze at last, meeting the officer's eyes with unnerving calm. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to argue. One call, he knew, could ground more than just this flight. Passengers felt the weight of that silence. The cabin lights hummed overhead, phones tilted higher. Injustice had already been documented. The question was no longer whether he belonged in seat 1 Ampere. The question was, what would happen when the world saw this unfold in real time? Have you ever witnessed someone's entire world shift in 15 minutes? Because this isn't just about a seat on a plane. This is one of those real-life stories, black stories, that forces entire industries to reckon with themselves. Stay with me, because what happens next will change how you look at air travel forever. The man in seat 1 Ampere looked nothing like what the crew expected from a premium passenger. His charcoal suit was pressed, but his shoes were plain, almost modest. No flashy watch, no loud jewelry. A worn leather briefcase rested neatly at his feet. To some, it whispered discipline. To others, it screamed suspicion. The captain, standing over him, saw only contradiction. First class was supposed to be predictable executives in tailored navy, honeymoon couples glowing with champagne, frequent flyers clutching branded carry-ons. This man didn't fit the pattern. That disconnect had already planted the seed of doubt in every exchange. Passengers felt the tension. A businessman 2 rows back leaned toward his neighbor, muttering, "He doesn't look like first class." The woman beside him raised an eyebrow, not entirely agreeing, but not ready to defend either. Bias often hides in whispers before it shouts. The crew's body language told its own story. The lead flight attendant stood straighter, as if bracing for conflict. Another, younger attendant lingered in the aisle, tablet clutched to her chest like a shield. She avoided eye contact with the man in 1 Ampere, focusing instead on the captain, silently waiting for his cues. In the hierarchy of the cabin, uniforms outranked tickets. The man in 1 Ampere remained still, an island of composure. He didn't shift, didn't fidget. That calm unnerved the people determined to move him. Authority expects submission, not silence. The more he stayed quiet, the more their assumptions filled the void. A teenager across the aisle held her phone at shoulder height, pretending to scroll but clearly recording. Her live comments scrolled so fast she could barely follow. "They're targeting him. Why keep asking for ID?" This is profiling, plain and simple. She bit her lip, nervous, but didn't stop streaming. The atmosphere thickened with unspoken rules of class and appearance. In first class, Wealth was supposed to be visible. Rolex gleam, designer logos, luggage with gold accents. The absence of those markers made the man an outsider in their eyes, no matter what his boarding pass said. One detail everyone noticed, though, was the way he met the captain's glare. He didn't blink. He didn't drop his gaze. That simple refusal was a disruption in itself, challenging the unwritten script where passengers shrink under authority. A middle-aged woman in the third row leaned toward her husband. "Why not just move him?" she whispered. He shook his head. He paid for that seat. Their quiet exchange revealed the split in the cabin, half siding with authority, half recognizing injustice. The whispers grew into a low murmur, a hum of judgment vibrating through the cabin. Every raised phone added weight. Every sidelong glance fed the divide. This wasn't just about a man in a seat. It was about the unspoken rules that decide who belongs where and how quickly those rules turn into weapons. The man in 1 Ampere adjusted his tie and rested his hand on the armrest, steady, deliberate. His very composure was a counter-argument, one the captain couldn't dismiss but also couldn't control. In that pressurized space, judgment had already been passed by dozens of eyes. The only question left was whose version of belonging would prevail when the world outside the cabin finally saw. The first real barrier came not from the passengers, but from the uniformed authority standing inches away. The captain's voice hardened, his jaw tight. "I've asked you politely. Show your ID again." The man in 1 Ampere didn't raise his tone. He simply lifted the same boarding pass and ID he had already provided documents as ordinary as any other travelers. His calm delivery made the demand sound absurd. "First class. Sie at 1 Ampere. Verified." The captain didn't even glance down this time. He waved a dismissive hand as though the papers themselves were tainted. "We'll need further verification. Sit tight until security arrives." Gasps fluttered through the cabin. The implication was clear. His proof wasn't proof enough. The ID wasn't invalid. It was him that was being invalidated. One flight attendant, the younger of the two, shifted uneasily. Her grip on the tablet tightened, the edges digging into her palms. She had seen the pass scanned at boarding. She had watched the system confirm it. But she stayed silent, unwilling to challenge her superior in front of a cabin full of phone. From 3 rows back, a man in a blazer leaned forward. His voice was low but carried. "Come on, he showed you everything. Let the man sit." His words sparked a ripple of murmurs, some nodding in agreement, others tightening their lips, unwilling to side against authority. The captain turned, scanning the crowd, his presence radiating control. "Sir, this is procedure," he declared, louder now, projecting to the entire cabin. "When documentation is inconsistent, we verify." Aye, but there had been no inconsistency. Everyone who had been paying attention knew that. The inconsistency lay in expectation, not paperwork. The passenger in 1 Ampere didn't argue. He placed his ID back in his pocket and rested his hand on the phone, recording every second. His silence was louder than any protest. The cabin split into 2 camps. One side whispered, "He should just cooperate." The other whispered back, "He already has." Both sides filmed. Both sides posted. And with every passing second, the story escaped the cabin and entered the feeds of strangers across the country. The younger attendant finally spoke, voice barely audible. "Captain, the boarding system already cleared," but the glare she received snapped her words shut. Power had spoken, and power didn't like correction. The businessman from earlier shook his head. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, louder this time. Phones swiveled toward him, capturing not just the conflict at the front but the growing resistance from within the cabin itself. Still, the captain held firm. His authority had been challenged in public, and now he doubled down. "If you cannot comply, you will be removed from this aircraft." That was the first true wall, the moment where simple procedure transformed into open confrontation. A paying passenger, ticket and ID in hand, threatened with removal, not for what he lacked, but for who he was. The man in 1 Ampere remained composed, his lips pressed into a line, his eyes steady. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His phone captured every syllable, every sneer, every refusal to see him as legitimate. And the cabin, half silent, half murmuring, waited to see whether authority would push past its own logic, or whether the cameras already rolling would force the story in another direction. The tension broke when the captain gave a sharp nod to the crew. "Escort him out." 2 attendants hesitated, then stepped closer. their movements stiff. Neither wanted to be the one to physically challenge a passenger under the glare of dozens of phone cameras. The man in 1 ampere didn't budge. He simply angled his phone upward, ensuring every second was captured. From the back of the cabin, a voice rang out. "Wait a minute! He's shown you everything! Why are you trying to remove him?" It came from a woman in a navy blazer, her own phone raised high. Her words hung in the air, undeniable evidence that not everyone in the cabin was willing to stay quiet. The murmurs turned into a chorus. "Let him sit. Check the system again. This is harassment." Every voice added weight, the cabin transforming into a courtroom with no judge but countless witnesses. The captain squared his shoulders, but his authority was already slipping. For every order he gave, another passenger contradicted it, their words multiplying across live streams and social feeds. One teenager whispered into her camera, "This is insane. They're targeting him even with ID. Everyone's watching this." Her comment section erupted lines of outrage, disbelief, demands for accountability. Still, the attendants moved closer, their uniforms now symbols of pressure. The man in 1 ampere lifted his free hand, palm open, a gesture of calm rather than resistance. He spoke clearly, so both the cabin and the cameras could hear. "I've provided my boarding pass and ID. I am seated where I belong." The statement was simple, but it echoed with power. It wasn't defiance, it was fact. And that made it harder for the crew to frame him as disruptive. A middle-aged man in the second row leaned forward, voice steady. "I saw his documents. He's telling the truth." Others chimed in, small confirmations that built into something larger, collective doubt of the captain's narrative. The attendants froze mid-aisle, caught between conflicting forces, the order of their superior and the undeniable presence of a dozen recording eyes. Their hesitation was damning. It showed the crowd and the world that even those tasked with enforcing authority weren't convinced of its fairness. The captain's face flushed red. He barked, louder this time, as if volume could restore control. "If he does not leave voluntarily, we will have security remove him." The threat only amplified the murmurs, the phones, the streams. What had begun as a single conflict now pulsed through an entire cabin of witnesses, each one deciding where they stood. The air was thick with the sense that something larger than a seat assignment was at stake. The man in 1 ampere said nothing more. He simply kept his gaze steady, his phone steady, his composure unbroken. Around him, the cabin had transformed into a public trial, and the verdict was no longer in the captain's hands. It was in the hands of the passengers recording, the viewers watching, and the world waiting to judge. The man in 1 ampere reached calmly into his jacket pocket. Every eye followed his hand as though the smallest movement might shift the entire cabin's fate. Slowly, deliberately, he withdrew the boarding pass creased from use, but clear, and his government-issued ID. He held them out with the precision of someone who knew this moment mattered. Phones tilted forward. Dozens of lenses captured the papers as though they were holy relics. "Here," he said, voice steady. "Boarding pass, identification, both valid." The younger attendant stepped closer, hesitating before taking them. Her hands trembled slightly as she scanned the documents with her tablet. A green check flashed across the screen, boarding pass verified, ID matched. Her lips parted to speak, but the captain's hand came down over hers, pushing the tablet aside before she could announce the result. "This isn't good enough," he declared. "These could be counterfeit." The crowd erupted. Murmurs became protests. "Counterfeit? That's ridiculous. The system showed green. We saw it." The evidence had been undeniable, yet it was brushed away with a single accusation. The man in 1 ampere didn't flinch. He extended his open palm toward the captain, silently asking for the documents back. When they were returned, he placed them carefully on the tray table in front of him, positioning them where every camera could see. The teenager live streaming zoomed in, her viewers commenting in real time. "That's a real ID. No way this is fake. They're trying to bury him." The chat feed scrolled so fast it was unreadable, a blur of outrage spilling beyond the cabin's walls. The younger attendant finally found her voice. "Captain, the system already—" "Quiet," he snapped. "Do not contradict me in front of passengers." That single command hung heavier than the accusation itself. The audience both inside the plane and outside on streams saw it for what it was. Not procedure, but suppression. Authority closing ranks against its own truth. A woman across the aisle raised her voice. "We all saw the checkmark. Are you saying your own system can't be trusted?" Others nodded, emboldened. The cabin had stopped being passive observers. They were now participants, witnesses turned advocates. But the captain pressed on, his tone sharp, uncompromising. Until this can be further investigated, he will be removed. The man in 1 ampere didn't argue. He leaned back, folded his hands, and let the documents remain visible on the tray. His silence carried more weight than protest. The cabin buzzed with disbelief, phones filming, voices rising, evidence lying in plain sight yet treated as nothing. It was the first undeniable moment of exposure. The truth had been shown, recorded, confirmed, and then, just as quickly, dismissed. That clash between evidence and authority was the spark that transformed outrage into something larger. This wasn't just a passenger showing ID. It was proof being erased, trust being shattered, and injustice being broadcast in real time to anyone willing to watch. The announcement crackled over the intercom. "Supervisor to the cabin immediately." A murmur rippled through the rows. This was no longer just a confrontation between one passenger, and the captain authority was summoning reinforcements. Moments later, a uniformed supervisor stepped on board, tablet in hand, expression already tight with irritation. He strode down the aisle with the practiced authority of someone accustomed to ending disputes quickly. "What's the situation?" he demanded. The captain wasted no time. Passenger refusing to comply with verification procedures. Documents appear questionable. His words were crisp, calculated, delivered loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. The supervisor turned to the man in 1 ampere, gaze flicking to the documents, still resting neatly on the tray table. He picked up the boarding pass and ID, scanning them with his tablet. The same green check lit up the screen. Verified. He hesitated. The truth stared back at him, undeniable. But the captain's eyes burned into his, silently pressing for alignment. Power demanded solidarity. From the back, a voice shouted, "We all saw that! Verified twice now!" Phones tilted higher. The live stream counters surged. Viewers typed furiously. "Even the supervisor knows. How many times do they need proof?" The supervisor cleared his throat. "Our system does confirm the documents." His voice faltered under the captain's glare. "But we have strict protocols when identity seems inconsistent with ticketing." The phrasing was deliberate, slippery. Identity seems inconsistent. Not documents invalid. Not boarding pass incorrect. Just the vaguest justification to keep pressing. A passenger in business attire snapped, "That's nonsense. You're saying he doesn't look like he belongs here? That's not protocol, that's profiling." Applause broke out from a few rows, timid at first, then louder as courage spread. The supervisor shifted uncomfortably. The noise, the cameras, the growing defiance, it all pressed against him. But procedure, or at least the version dictated by the captain, anchored him in place. "Sir," he said, addressing the man in 1 ampere, "we'll need you to step off the aircraft until this matter is resolved." The man didn't move. He placed one hand over his documents, the other still holding the phone. His voice was calm, unshaken. "I have complied with every request. The system verifies me. I am seated where my ticket says I belong. I will not leave." The words carried a weight that silenced the cabin. No anger, no shouting, just fact, immovable and irrefutable. The teenager live streaming whispered into her camera, "This is huge. He's standing his ground. They're trying to remove him anyway." Her viewer count exploded. Comments demanded accountability, tagged journalists, and spread hashtags at lightning speed. The supervisor glanced at the crowd, dozens of witnesses, dozens of phones, thousands already watching online. He knew the optics were disastrous, yet he hesitated, trapped between loyalty to hierarchy and the undeniable reality unfolding before him. The standoff stretched, every second layering pressure onto the next. The cabin was no longer just a space for travel, it had become an arena, with authority on one side, evidence on the other, and the public watching from every angle. And the man in 1 ampere, silent and steady, was at the center, proof that calm resistance could be louder than any order shouted from above. The cabin was a pressure cooker, steam rising with every unanswered question. Passengers whispered, live streams blazed, and still the man in 1 ampere hadn't raised his voice. Instead, he leaned forward, sliding the boarding pass and ID back into his jacket with deliberate calm. Then, almost casually, he reached for his phone. He tapped once, twice, and held the device to his ear. The red recording light stayed on. His tone was measured, almost businesslike, as though this chaos were nothing more than another meeting on his calendar. "It's me," he said softly. "Initiate protocol. Immediate." The captain froze mid-breath. The supervisor blinked. Neither knew what protocol meant, but the certainty in the man's voice sent a ripple through the cabin. Passengers exchanged looks. This wasn't the tone of someone pleading for help. It was the tone of someone issuing instructions. He ended the call in under 15 seconds, sliding the phone back onto the tray table. Silence swallowed the space. Then he looked directly at the captain. His gaze was steady, his words precise. "You've made assumptions about me. That ends now." "End." Gasps stirred among the rows. A businessman whispered, "Who is this guy?" The live-stream chat exploded. "He's not just any passenger. Did you hear that? Protocol? He's in control, not them." The supervisor's composure faltered. "Sir, who exactly are you?" The man leaned back, adjusting his tie with the composure of someone used to commanding rooms. "I am a paying passenger, seated where I belong, and I am also someone whose call carries more weight than your accusation." "M?" The captain's face tightened. "Are you threatening us?" "No," the man said calmly. "I'm clarifying. There is a difference." Phones caught every syllable, every subtle shift in tone. The audience beyond the cabin could feel it. This wasn't a man scrambling to defend himself. This was someone who held leverage, someone whose patience was wearing thin. The teenager streaming shook her head, eyes wide. "Guys, I think he's important. Like really important." Her chat flooded. "CEO vibes. Bet he owns something big. The airline's about to regret this." Even the attendants sensed the shift. The younger one stepped back, no longer leaning toward removal, but watching him with new calculation. Authority, it turned out, wasn't always stitched into a uniform. Sometimes it sat quietly in seat 1 ampere, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The man placed both hands on the armrests, his posture unshakable. He didn't need to shout, didn't need to fight. The twist wasn't in his words alone, it was in the way the power dynamic had inverted without him lifting more than a phone. And for the first time, the captain hesitated not because of the documents he had dismissed, but because he realized he might be facing someone far beyond a difficult passenger. Someone who could undo more than just a single flight. The supervisor's tablet buzzed. A new notification lit up the screen, internal message flagged, "Priority." His eyes darted over the text, and his posture stiffened. Passengers leaned forward, straining to see. Phones zoomed in from every angle, hungry for a glimpse. He swallowed. The message was blunt. "Passenger in seat 1 ampere. VIP clearance. Do not escalate. Await further instruction." The captain noticed the hesitation. "What does it say?" he demanded. The supervisor tilted the screen just slightly, then quickly angled it back to his chest. "It's not conclusive," he stammered. But his eyes betrayed him. The crowd had seen the shift. The younger attendant whispered to a nearby passenger. It said VIP. The word spread like wildfire through the cabin. The man in 1 ampere reached calmly into his briefcase this time. The leather creaked as he opened it, each movement deliberate, like a ritual. From inside, he removed a slim tablet, pressed his fingerprint against the sensor, and the screen lit with a corporate dashboard. Charts, numbers, real-time analytics of an airline most passengers knew all too well. He angled it just enough for those around him to see. "According to your own system," he said, voice steady, "I hold executive-level clearance. Your own database recognizes me." Gasps echoed down the rows. A woman clapped her hand over her mouth. The live stream chat exploded. "He has insider access. That's the airline's portal. This is bigger than a seat dispute." The captain's face drained of color. That doesn't prove ownership. That could be falsified access." But the man was already scrolling, revealing board meeting schedules, compliance reports, regulatory filings with his name clearly attached. His finger paused over a section marked Board of Directors. Secure access only. He tapped once, and the screen filled with his credentials. Chairman, majority stakeholder. The silence that followed was deafening. The younger attendant took a step back, her earlier nervousness replaced with awe. He's the owner," she whispered, too softly for the captain but loud enough for a passenger's phone mic to capture. The man in 1 ampere closed the tablet, slid it back into his briefcase, and folded his hands over the armrests once more. "You dismissed my boarding pass. You dismissed my identification. You even dismissed your own system when it showed the truth. But tell me, how do you dismiss this? The question wasn't loud, but it reverberated through the cabin with the force of a gavel strike. Passengers erupted in murmurs. Some applauded. Others simply stared, mouths open, as the realization sank in. This wasn't just a passenger with a complaint. This was the man who could ground an entire airline with a single directive. And for the first time, the captain had no command left to give. The supervisor's tablet buzzed again, louder this time, the vibration rattling against its plastic case. He hesitated, then tapped the alert. A video call request filled the screen. Corporate legal and compliance urgent. He accepted. Suddenly, the cabin lights reflected off the glossy surface as three faces appeared, an attorney in a gray suit, a compliance director with sharp glasses, and the airline's regional vice president, visibly breathless. Their voices came clipped, overlapping. "Is Dr. Carter on board?" the attorney demanded. The supervisor's throat went dry. He glanced toward seat 1 Ampere. "Yes, ma'am. He's here." The man in 1 Ampere didn't bother to rise. He simply inclined his head toward the screen. "I trust you're recording this." Phones angled closer, capturing every flicker of the call. The passengers watched in stunned silence. The livestream audience erupted. "They're calling corporate legal. He's Dr. Carter. This is next level." And the vice president's face paled as he spotted the passenger. "Dr. Carter? This is a misunderstanding. We'll resolve this immediately." The captain stiffened. "You can't be serious. He's been non-compliant since boarding." The attorney's eyes narrowed. "Non-compliant or repeatedly harassed after presenting valid documentation? Because what I see, Captain, is a material incident already broadcast live across multiple platforms. This isn't just poor judgment, it's potential liability." "Huh?" A low murmur spread through the cabin. The words material incident hung in the air like thunderclouds. The compliance director leaned forward. "Effective immediately, cease escalation. Dr. Carter has unrestricted executive access. Any further action without cause will be treated as misconduct under federal aviation law." Gasps rippled down the rows. Passengers exchanged wide-eyed glances. On the live streams, comments flooded in. "They just admitted he's executive. Captain's career is over. This is history in the making." The captain opened his mouth, but the vice president cut him off. "Captain, step aside. You've done enough damage. From this moment, your authority on this flight is suspended pending review." The words landed like a hammer strike. The captain's face turned crimson, his jaw clenching so tight the veins in his neck bulged. He wanted to protest, but the presence of corporate legal, compliance, and the world's cameras left him no room. Meanwhile, the man in 1 Ampere remained perfectly calm, as if this were just another board meeting running precisely on schedule. His silence said more than any speech. Authority had shifted, and there was no turning back. The attorney spoke once more, voice steady and clear. "Dr. Carter, please proceed with your journey. The board has already been informed. We will convene formally once you've landed." And with that, the hierarchy of the cabin inverted completely. The crew, once enforcers, now stood paralyzed. The passengers, once observers, now bore witness to a reversal so complete it felt historic. The trial by cabin was over. The trial of the airline itself had just begun. The silence after corporate's directive was suffocating. Every passenger felt it, the weight of power shifting right in front of them. The captain, still standing rigid in the aisle, looked like a man stripped bare of authority. His lips parted, but no words came. Then the attorney's voice rang from the tablet once more. "Effective immediately. Captain Reynolds, you are relieved of duty pending investigation. Flight attendants, record this acknowledgement." Gasps swept through the cabin. Phones rose higher. Someone whispered, "They just fired him. Right here." Another added, "On camera." The live stream comment sections lit up with fire emojis, hashtags, and declarations of justice served. The captain's face drained of color. His hand twitched at his side, but he knew better than to argue now. Under the glare of passengers and the watchful eyes of corporate, even pride had no place to hide. The supervisor cleared his throat, voice unsteady. "Dr. Carter, on behalf of the airline, I apologize for this incident. You are welcome to continue your journey without interruption." The man in 1 Ampere gave a small nod, nothing more. He didn't gloat, didn't revel in the reversal. He simply remained calm, composed the image of someone who had expected this outcome all along. A ripple of applause started from the back of the cabin, tentative at first, then stronger as passengers joined in. The sound grew until the entire first-class section erupted into clapping, some even cheering. The live streams captured every second, passengers celebrating the man who had turned humiliation into accountability. The teenager holding her phone whispered to her stream, tears in her eyes. He didn't yell, he didn't fight, he just stood his ground, and now the captain's gone. Her viewer count soared past 50,000. The dismissed captain, face burning, turned stiffly toward the exit. He moved down the aisle like a shadow of the authority he once wielded. No one spoke to him. No one reached out. Phones tracked his every step until he disappeared from view. The younger flight attendant finally exhaled, shoulders sagging with relief. She turned to the man in 1 ampere, voice quiet but sincere. "Thank you for staying calm. I think you saved more than just yourself." The cabin settled, but the energy remained electric. Everyone knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Not just a confrontation, but an instant consequence. A man wronged in plain sight had shifted an entire system with nothing more than truth, patience, and one decisive call. And as the aircraft doors sealed again, the passengers exchanged glances, aware that their story, the story of this flight, would be replayed across millions of screens before they even touched down. The incident didn't end when the cabin door closed. By the time the plane touched down, the video had already reached millions. News outlets clipped the confrontation into 30-second packages, headlines screaming across every platform. Airline captain removed after harassing black CEO in first class. The ripple effect was immediate. Within 48 hours, the airline announced a full review of its verification policies. No passenger will be asked for identification beyond standard procedure without documented cause, the statement read. For many, it was too little. Too late. But it was a start. Industry analysts dissected the fallout. Share prices dipped, then rebounded only after the company pledged sweeping reform. A new app update promised transparency. Passengers could now see when and why an ID check was triggered, with records stored for legal accountability. Regulators applauded the move, but pressed for stricter oversight across all carriers. Civil rights groups seized the moment. "This isn't about one flight," a spokesperson declared at a press conference. "It's about a system that treats legitimacy as something earned only by appearances." Today, one CEO had the resources to push back. Tomorrow, it could be any of us. Case studies appeared in think pieces and business journals. Harvard Business Review published an analysis titled, "When Silence Becomes Power, Crisis Leadership at 30,000 Feet." They highlighted how Dr. Dexon Revin .com. Carter's refusal to argue, his choice to document and calmly escalate, reshaped not just a flight but an entire corporate response. Meanwhile, passengers from the flight became minor celebrities overnight. The teenager's live stream was replayed on national news. The woman who shouted, "We all saw it," was interviewed about courage and bystander accountability. For weeks, hashtags linked back to the same idea, that documenting injustice forces institutions to confront it. And the numbers spoke loudly. Internal surveys revealed a 43% drop in discrimination-related complaints within 6 months of the reforms. Stockholder confidence, rattled at first, recovered as customers praised the airline's transparency app. Competitors, under pressure, rolled out their own policy updates, citing customer dignity initiatives. The story transcended aviation. It became shorthand in boardrooms, classrooms, and community forums. The flight where silence exposed bias and truth grounded arrogance. Dr. Carter never gave interviews. He didn't need to. His presence in the cabin, the recording on his phone, and the quiet authority of his words were already immortalized. The lesson had spread far beyond the aisle of seat 1 ampere. The flight ended, but the story refused to land. Clips of the confrontation circled endlessly on phones, in classrooms, in boardrooms. People replayed the moment not because of the shouting, but because of the silence. A man refusing to bend, refusing to be erased, while the system unraveled around him. And here's the truth. Injustice rarely announces itself with flashing lights. More often it comes dressed as procedure, spoken in polite tones, framed as protocol. It hides in the extra ID check, the raised eyebrow, the assumption that someone doesn't belong. What happened in seat 1 ampere was extraordinary. Not because it was unique, but because it was documented. That's the power you hold in your pocket right now. A phone, a camera, proof. Document everything, Dr. Carter once told a colleague. That phrase has become a mantra since this flight. Because silence doesn't just protect discrimination, it enables it. Every recording, every photo, every witness who chooses to speak up is a brick pulled from the wall that bias hides behind. So ask yourself, how many times have you seen something and stayed quiet? How many times have you watched someone else be questioned, doubted, diminished, while knowing they had every right to stand where they stood? Your story matters. If you've lived a moment like this, whether on a plane, in a store, at a bank, or in a classroom, share it. Tell it. Write it. Post it. Add your voice to the record, because every voice makes it harder for the next injustice to hide. Real-life stories. Black stories. Stories that force entire industries to change. This isn't just about one CEO or one flight. It's about all of us, and the systems we choose to challenge or ignore. Remember this. One calm refusal, one recorded moment, one voice saying, "Enough," can ripple farther than you think. It can ground more than a flight. It can ground the very arrogance that lets bias take off in the first place. So next time you see it, document it. Because justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes, justice just needs to be seen.